Welcome to FA Exclusive. With me is Glenn Carl, a senior partner at FOI. As usual, we look at the three most important issues of the month.
Well, hello, Atul. I wish sometimes that we could speak about perhaps space opera or children's literature, because then we could have a happy ending, a clear narrative, and feel good about the universe. But unfortunately, we have to talk about the current iteration of intractable woes and tensions. And the three we've chosen today, because this is the lot of people who do foreign policy, I guess, are Hezbollah and Israel, and the tensions between them and in the region now are worsening, if that's even imaginable. How Europe is more volatile and seems to be catching election fever, and what the consequences of those feverish developments will be. And then the third is that Russia has kicked off a diplomatic gambit, a charm offensive, and also a search for some concrete benefits by traveling to North Korea. But the resonance of this trip extends well beyond North Korea.
Excellent.
Atul, tell us what the heck is going on in the Middle East, or specifically between Israel and Hezbollah right now.
So, very simply, Hezbollah and Israel tensions continue to worsen. So, what has happened? Well, my notes tell me that Hezbollah vowed to fight with no rules and no red lines. I didn't know they had many rules, but hey ho, there we go, I learned. And these will kick off, or this fight will kick off if full-out war erupts between Lebanon and Israel. So what is happening right now, since October 7th, when Hamas attacked Israel, Israel then declared war on Hamas, and Hezbollah has been very kindly firing missiles at North Israel. So what has that led to? Well, evacuation of about 90,000 Israelis from their homes in the northern part of Israel. They are staying in hotels, they are staying in shelters, yada yada. So tensions have been mounting. Forest fires have broken out. There have been odd casualties on both sides, obviously higher on the Hezbollah side. And we'll get into the whys later, but as of now, non-Lebanese armed fighters are ready to volunteer. They want to head to Lebanon to fight with Hezbollah against the evil Jewish crusader state and fight a new jihad. Charming indeed.
If I could interject just for a moment, just to give a little perspective on how significant for the parties involved these developments are, that we tick off. Oh, there have been removals from along the border. Okay, it's about a 20-kilometer zone, I think, from the Lebanese Israeli border, which has been evacuated. But in the context of Israel, that amounts to upwards of 10% of the length of the country. And although the population, 90,000 people, is significant, Israel nonetheless is 8 million, I think. It doesn't seem that large in the overall context of the society. It's a meaningful portion of the country, and I've been to that border, and there are charming towns along the Israeli side. And as I drove from one to the other, the residents showed me where missiles had landed or clashes had occurred within Israel during the 2006 war. And there literally is almost nowhere for either party to go. So it is a dramatic event that just to have the evacuations forced by the occasional incursion in the rocket launch. Sorry, go ahead.
No, not at all, not at all. Now, note that Hezbollah is the crown jewel in Iran's axis of resistance, and Iran has been using proxy non-state actors against Israel. They are the Houthis in the Red Sea. They've been very effective. More about that later. They've also armed Hamas. And of course, Hezbollah is their prime asset. And Hezbollah now has more armed men than Lebanon's army. Lebanon, in any case, has had a protracted civil war in the past. It was Glenn's, I believe, first assignment, really, when you joined the CIA. And it has been a sore for Israel in many ways. And in many ways, Hezbollah emerged in 1985 after Israel went into Lebanon in 1982 to destroy, actually, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. But really, Hezbollah is now a big worry. It's a much bigger worry for Israel strategically than Hamas. There was a war in 2006, which, of course, the head of Hezbollah views as a mistake. But just so we know how things are worsening in the region, on Sunday, June 23rd, the Houthis and the Islamic resistance in Iraq aimed a joint raid on 4 vessels in Israel's Haifa port. So you've got Iranian proxies in Yemen, the Houthis, you've got Iranian proxies in Iraq, you've got Iranian proxies, I'm sure, in Syria, and you've got, of course, Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is more powerful than Lebanon now. The post-Sykes-Picot order is clearly crumbling. The state of Lebanon is clearly dysfunctional. This is happening at a time when conflict with Hamas continues. Remember that Israel's war cabinet stands dissolved. We have videos on that. You can listen to it. We won't get into the internal divisions in Israel. That's something we'll do another time. Suffice to say, senior figures in the Israeli Defense Forces, intelligence services, and diplomacy have lost confidence in Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, or Benjamin Netanyahu. Bibi is his nickname. And a divided Israel now faces yet another external challenge. So that is the what. Now, why does all this matter, Glenn?
Well, a little context to show history, or how past is prologue, or perhaps there are lessons to be learned that none of us ever learned, or perhaps we can't because the problems are the same and people don't change, and so the response is the same, and so then the disaster, plays out similarly. Meaning that in 1982, Israel, the conservative leaders in Israel thought that the Palestine Liberation Organization, then the nationalist leadership for the Palestinians, was creating unbearable problems, terrorist attacks and so on, which is true, from Lebanon. And so Israel invaded in 1982, thinking we will destroy, push them away from the border and destroy them. And militarily, one can achieve that kind of objective, and they did. The Israelis quickly occupied the southern half of Lebanon. The result, however, was, yes, fundamentally the destruction of the PLO, which was then replaced and has been since now for 40 plus years by Hezbollah, which is, as Atul touched upon, and as I'm sure you all know, an Iranian creature, not totally beholden or taking all his orders from, but created by and sustained by Iran. And Hezbollah is far stronger militarily than the PLO ever was. It actually is a national military force. In 2006, so 25 years after that attack, the Israelis decided that Hezbollah was creating too many problems, the new headache, instead of the PLO. And so there was another war in 2006. The result of that war was a mixed military success. But as usual, the military can't solve political and social issues most of the time. And out of
unless you're Julius Caesar and you just kill all the Gauls.
Okay. Well, even there was nonetheless, after Caesar's great triumph, there was 100 years of civil war, fundamentally. But that's another issue. Uprisings by the Gauls, they were not happy to accept that for 4 generations. But out of the 2006 war, you ended up with actually a strengthened Hezbollah, and Hamas sort of emerged also. Just one point of comparison, why the history is relevant. In the 2006 war, Hezbollah had probably 40,000 rockets it could launch, which could reach significant portions of Israel, but not all of it. Today, Hezbollah has, we're informed, well over 100,000 rockets, almost all of which can reach any point of Israel at all, as well as a much stronger conventional military force. So the unintended consequence is sort of the reverse of what was intended.
In a nutshell, the 1982 invasion was a historic blunder.
Well, I would say so. Others, I'm sure Benjamin Netanyahu and the right wing of the Likud party would vehemently disagree and denounce me probably as anti-Israeli for daring to suggest something to that effect. But I'm none of that. I would seek what Israel would serve Israel's national interests, and I don't think that did really. But okay, that's irrelevant. So why did this happen, though? There was this continuing escalation of tit for tat testing and point making by the Iranians and Hezbollah on one side, and then Israel on the other. And here the responsibility, really the blame, should lie, I think, fundamentally in Tehran and with the Hezbollah leadership, who have launched, I think it's 4,000 rockets since October 7 from Lebanon into Israel, and have killed a number of people. The Israelis then have responded. The Israelis since October 7 have killed over 300 Hezbollah fighters, soldiers, whatever you want to call them. And then the counter response of Hezbollah has killed 15 Israeli soldiers or so. Israel struck a command off building in Lebanon and killed some of the Hezbollah leaders a week ago, I guess. And that is the specific event that is with Hezbollah's response, which was to send a commando 20 kilometers, I think it is, inside Israel across the border, who was killed. And that has led to these tensions. Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, has brought Cyprus into this problem, saying that Cyprus is implicated because it is coordinating its military and providing facilities to Israel as it plans to attack and engage, wage war against Hezbollah. And that is
just if I can jump in.
Yeah.
If I can jump in. It's important to know, and we will show you the map very quickly as to boom and as to what we are talking about. Our colleague said this. You can see Lebanon. Okay, I'll zoom in. This is the Mediterranean. This is the Eastern Mediterranean. You can see Turkey has a large part of the Eastern Mediterranean. This is Greece. And as we zoom in, this is Cyprus. Northeastern Cyprus is Turkish Cyprus. Cyprus itself is divided. This is a very divided region of the world. The southwestern island is with the Greeks. And of course, the threat is to the southwestern part of the island, because Israel and southwestern Greece clearly have an arrangement. And of course, here Hezbollah is threatening that war will hit Cyprus too. And this, if we go further south, this is of course Israel, and you can see it has a big border here with Syria. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around far too much. And this is its border with Lebanon, and the big port here. There are many towns. The big port here is Haifa, which is not that far. And this is the territory the northern part, which has been under fire.
It's a leisurely half-hour drive from Haifa to the border, if
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
leisurely on not highways.
yeah.
It's not far. This is the shocking thing. If one were to drive on a highway from the Lebanese border of Israel to the south, it's about a 3-hour drive. It's not, the distances are really small.
And apparently forest fires have broken out on both sides of the border because of the fighting. Over to you, Glenn.
Okay, so we've gone through this confusing, endless litany of tit for tat, disaster, and attack, counterattack, denunciation. Um, it's a zero sum game with no apparent way out, and that has been the case. Choose your starting date for 1948, but certainly with Lebanon since 1982. When we say Lebanon, that really means with the Shia population and Hezbollah and Iran. So that is what's happening, and those two specific events are two more drops, in the vase or the cup, as opposed to something qualitatively different. But the tensions get worse and worse and worse as the war becomes eternal almost, and no one sees a way out. And as always, there are pressures, generally from the right, to engage in a strong response, a kinetic, as military people say, a military response. We can impose our will and make you stop doing what we don't like you doing. And generally, and I'm not in any way a pacifist, but in general, that on sociological, political issues is not true unless one kills every other person in the opposing population, as Atul, half seriously touched upon. But that is sort of the only way a true military solution is possible in the situation. So we now find ourselves in this situation where everyone observing these terrible events in Gaza in the Middle East have feared the expansion of the clash into a general war. And Nasrallah has warned that could occur, as has Tehran, and as have many members of the Israeli government too. But conservative elements are saying, in the Israeli government, we have to solve this problem now. And surprisingly, Benjamin Netanyahu is the one who has held not unleash the dogs of war in this instance, recognizing so far that it would bring Israel more problems than it probably could solve. So what about all of this disaster? Well, as uncertainty rises, people will buy more gold, and I'm not being facetious. It does have economic consequences. And Atul, why don't you tick off a couple of the potential catastrophes that will occur if cooler heads don't prevail or succeed in this instance?
Well, I mean, obviously, we already have seen the Houthi attacks, and I'll share my screen again. And this is where we have to thank our managing partner at FOI for pointing us in the right direction. And just look at this graph. It's IMF Port Watch. It's a partnership with Oxford University, apparently the best database for ship traffic. And I've pulled up a year's data here. So you look at the number of cargo ships, that's down. You look at the number of tanker ships, that's down. Look at the 7-day moving average. You can see that's down. So in a nutshell, this graph is telling us that the Houthis have had a profound effect in choking off the Suez. Yes, and traffic is probably 50% or of what it was, or maybe a little lesser. The point is that insurance rates have gone up because of the tensions. The length of time it takes, and I'll stop sharing, the length of time it takes for goods to get from Asia to Europe, that's gone up, sometimes significantly, because they're having to sail around Africa. And so that will put in exactly choke points. Your supply chains become more stretched, become more fragile. There is greater inflationary pressure. Trade suffers, and if conflict comes to the Eastern Mediterranean, we are not saying it's coming. May brim it over. This may be yet another drop, and once the cup brims over, then we could have significant impact, not just on the Israeli economy, not just on the economy of that region, especially. I'm excluding the oil producing Gulf there because they don't have the immediate and present danger. But certainly the pressure on the Lebanese economy, and that state is already fracturing. And by extension, there'll be pressures on Cyprus as well. And so
this is the thing. I forget the exact percentage, although we could probably find it, in 20 seconds or 30 seconds. But it's something like 15% of global GDP passes through the Suez Canal. I forget the.
Yeah, we covered that last time. We have a video. We have an analysis on that with all the numbers.
Since that bottleneck, one of 7 critical ones in literally on the globe, increases the transit costs, transportation costs, and so on, then you will have a dampening of global GDP growth rate, at least, if not. It's an increased pressure for recession and inflation.
Yes, so Europe in particular, and I was coming from Cyprus to Europe, there'll be greater pressure on Europe, which let's not forget, the British and the French built the Suez primarily to get to India, and primarily it was a big driver of European prosperity. And if that happens, then this brings us to the next point. We will have an even more volatile Europe.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.